We're now talking to Ian Halperin directly in Miami in the United States. Hi, how are you?
Very good, very good. Manishma.
Manishma. What do you say in Hebrew then?
Manishma.
The money beseder. Beseder
Beseder,
would be the
beseder.
traditional answer. It's a slightly different situation here right now. So it's a lot of spiritual work and breathing to keep us sane. Yeah, yeah.
So,
I, I think we definitely need spiritual breathing right now to keep us sane because what we're going through is one of the most horrific times we have seen in our lifetime since the Holocaust, since the last artillery were fired in the Holocaust. We've never seen anything like this. And it's all inexorably linked to one thing: anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and the prevalence among Jews to hate them, to besmirch them, and to try to get away with it is just appalling. And I ask you this: why in this land of plenty does the joy of peace escape many?
it's a philosophical question, you know. I'm the only person here in the room who's not Jewish, but since there's something interesting about this because
Well,
I
it doesn't
was,
matter if you're Jewish or non-Jewish. To be honest with you, and to all the Jews out there, to all the non-Jews, it's not a question of whether you're Jew or non-Jew. It's where your heart is. And in my book, Bigot, I say even in my hometown, there were many Jews who refused to support me all these years. They came to my charity events. I was chairman of the board of the Israeli Tennis Association for 5 years. They came there, and none of them ever cut a check. Like non-Jews cut checks. Everybody cut checks except people from my hometown. So it's not whether you're Jewish or non-Jew. It's where your heart is. And if you believe in human rights, if you believe in justice, and also if you believe in the beauty of peace and respect for each other and other cultures. Let's face it, Israel welcomes many non Jews. You have 2 million uh, Arab Israelis living there. They get votes. You know what Rogers Waters said? He says it's an apartheid state. Well, I was a big leader of the anti-apartheid movement when I was very young, and it has nothing to do with apartheid Israel. It's ridiculous. Apartheid was a two-class state. Israel isn't. You have people voting in the Knesset who are Arabs. You have Arabs in the Knesset. That never happened in apartheid. So what Roger Waters and other celebrities have said about Israel is extremely egregious, false. And when he says Israel's worse than Nazi Germany, I take that as a huge attack because my father's a Holocaust survivor. And I just can't be long shrouded in silence. I have to verbalize what I feel. And that's why I did the movie Wish You Weren't Here. And I did the book Bigot, because few have dared to voice their true opinion. And that's the problem. That's the problem in my hometown, Montreal. When push comes to shove, the moment of truth, they disappear.
yeah.
The Jews. And I call them out. And many non Jews have been more supportive than the Jews in my hometown of Montreal. And they refused to be shrouded in silence. They spoke out. So this is definitely not a Jew and non-Jew thing because we all bleed red. We're all the
Okay.
same. And here you are, a German, who I applaud you because, look, you're a successful DJ in music, but you've always had compassion for the Jewish people, respect for Israel. You go there often. And that's more than most Jews that I know in North
Hmm.
America. So it's not Jew or non-Jew. We all bleed red. We're all in this together. And we have to learn how to respect, appreciate the beauty of each other's cultures. There's nothing better. I mean, I got to be honest with you. The last thing I want to do in my life is be in a room surrounded by 100% Jews. And I'm Jewish. I want to learn from other people. I want to taste their food. I want to break bread with them. And I want to respect their religion the same way I expect them to respect mine. It's that simple. And when you talk about this war right now going on, look, I have to say, most people are in this war unwillingly. They've just been thrown in the middle of a war unwillingly. And on both sides, Palestinian and Israel, I'm calling out the enormous ego of the politicians to unwillingly throw these people in middle of a war. Like, if you take a vote, I guarantee you 99.9% of people on both sides will not want this war. Trust me. For my film and my book, I interviewed probably 1,000 people, equal on both sides. I had trouble finding one person who wanted a war. I actually stood up in the middle of the desert and said, does anyone want a war here? I'm having trouble finding one person who wants, they all want to break bread together. They all want to work together. So what the hell's going on? Why have we arrived here at this situation? And with Israel, a huge security breach, undeniably. It's supposed to be the most sophisticated intelligence in the world. Those fences have guns on them, bombs on them. I mean, how did this ever happen? October 7th. You know,
this is the billion-dollar question here for everybody. Like, how could this have ever happened? Exactly.
You're right. You're right. Do you know, I was the keynote speaker in a Muslim country October 6th in the evening in Istanbul. I was giving a keynote speech. It was packed. And I got a standing ovation. A Muslim family came up and they bought all my books. And they wanted to take me out for dinner that night. I said, sure. I went to dinner with them. It went till 4 a.m. And like 30, 40 people from their family showed up to meet me in Istanbul. Hey, I was feeling good. I was saying, wow, we could actually work together, respect each other. I wear the Star of David when I speak. I don't hide it. In Muslim country, I don't hide it. I say, look, I'm here. I respect your culture. Please respect mine. They respect it. They're very curious about Judaism there. And the next day I woke, October 7th, and the world completely changed again. And then I started seeing taxis in Istanbul with signs, no Israelis allowed, no Jews allowed. I mean, this was shocking.
Wow. I was just going to ask a question or explain something when I was starting, you know, because you said that promote Israeli culture. With me, I was a music editor at an independent radio station in Hanover, and I started to, you know, I was just curious. I knew about Israel, that they had the Churchills, which was a psychedelic band, which I always loved. And then I had a friend here from Israel. She's a musician. And then I asked her what kind of music is there actually happening right now, because I didn't know much about it. I knew Asaf Avidan, I knew Ofra Haza, Minimal Compact, Churchills. That's it. And then I entered a completely new world. That year I went to Israel for the first time in 2015, and I came back every year. And I felt, when I entered Israel for the first time, when I went to Tel Aviv, I felt very connected to the city. And I enjoyed, I felt comfortable and home there. But here's the thing. When I started to play Israeli music on the radio, I had a lot, you know, you bring a new band from France, you bring a new band from Scotland or Bosnia or Poland, and the people say, cool. You bring a band from Israel, it instantly gets political. But it's music,
It's
you know. You can't hear necessarily, unless it's singing in Hebrew, that the band is even from Israel. Fafa's band is in English. You know, you could say she's English. She's an American band. You don't hear it unless you tell to the people. So with that,
This all stretches back to Rome, Greece, the Byzantine Empire, medieval Europe. Jews have been musicians all since the beginning of time, and they've always received this. You know, it's nothing new.
what you know, you just described you being in Istanbul, and the next day the world changed. And since then, I was in Israel. I was in Gan Yavne, around 40 kilometers from the Gaza Strip, at my girlfriend's house. Sukkot just ended, and at 6:30 in the morning we heard the sirens, and I didn't really think it was real. I thought, did I dream? But then, quick, 30 seconds in Gan Yavne, you go down to the safe room, and we didn't know what happened until the noon. And when the noon arrived, the first infos came about, what happened in Sderot, the police station, the military points, and we couldn't believe it. And we locked ourselves in, And in those moments, especially the internet, the social media becomes a no-go area, because you see people suddenly say Allahu Akbar and, destroy Israel. And what's most shocking for me is when you talk to people, how that they don't have much knowledge about the history of the region. They don't even know how the word Palestine, that was, the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who, invented the Syria-Palestine. And the people just say, Palestine, Israel. And Israel is the Zionist white power, colonial power, and it takes away the country from, the Muslims. But the first Muslims came there in 600 or so. And but all the information is there.
Look, if you look at the ancient, medieval, and modern times history, the definitions are ever changing, and the definitions and the usage of the terms anti-Semitism in a range of contexts is changing by the day today, because we've never seen anything like this. And look, we could argue forever on the history, who was there first. I mean, you could go back to, Joshua. They said Joshua took it over. It doesn't matter at this point, and I'll tell you why. Israel got this land legally. Israel, I've traveled probably to at least 8 Muslim countries. There's a lot of Muslim countries around the world. Nobody says anything. Why can't the Jews have their own country too? Let's make it that simple. You look at Tunisia, Iraq, Iran, Syria, the list goes on and on and on of Muslim countries. Turkey, Saudi, the Emirates, Dubai. I've never heard a Jew complain, hey, why do they have a country? I've never heard ever a Jew complain about that. So why? The critical resource of studying this word, anti-Semitism, is why always when the Jews do something, is it so alarming, shocking, and policymakers, they're the worst. I mean, they're perpetrating a lot of the anti-Semitism, and obviously the Muslim Brotherhood in Qatar is sponsoring all the universities all over the world, infiltrating $1 trillion into places like Texas A&M, Yale, Cornell. This was calculated. And if you dig deep, what is going on now when you see a terrorist group like Hamas, using their own people as human shields? I guarantee you, those human shields, it would be tough to find 5 of them who support Hamas, a handful. And they're unwillingly there. And when you have all these human rights organizations like the UN complaining and all these politicians, well, hey, Israel has a right to defend itself. And we have to, nobody wants violence. But when somebody comes in, I don't know what's more concerning on October 7th. Hamas coming into Israel, killing all those people, torturing them, raping them, or 3/4 of the world supporting it. I don't know what's more worse.
Yeah.
It's alarming.
But why is that? I mean,
Well, it goes back to
rhetoric.
the world's oldest hate,
I know,
anti-Semitism.
Rhetoric, it's basically probably a rhetoric question. If you, we have in the world of, multimedia, of social media, we have footage released from the kibbutzim where the people were slaughtered. We have footage from the dash cams of the Hamas terrorists who were filming that.
But they deny it. People still deny it. In the States, it's legal to be a Holocaust denier. It's legal. I mean, with all the footage, with all the documentation, there's still a plethora of people in the United States who are Holocaust deniers. And that shows the wide gap between scholarly and popular understanding of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism, which is really become a major issue now, confronting not only Israel, but the entire world.
I have an interesting question for you regarding this.
Sure.
Like when I'm asked now about how I feel about the global anti-Semitism, on the one hand, it's horrific and it makes me want to puke on a daily basis. And on the other hand, I feel, and I do spirit work and light work. This is something I've been doing for over a decade. I believe that it's important to look at evil in the eye, to see the demons in front of your face, to realize their existence, because people can't contain this kind of demonism. Like, it's so far-fetched. It's sci-fi. It's like so far from reality. There's no rationality about it. And I believe, just like the Epstein case that I know you've covered as well, that when you see the evil, when people understand that it exists, that it's not a fabrication of reality, that something has to be done and now, and something did happen in terms of that case. So how do you feel about it? Do you feel that it's good that we're seeing the anti-Semitism right now? That it's surfacing the way it is?
I think you said it very well. And I really can't add to that because you were very poignant. And I do believe this is a long time coming. And if you look at the numbers in France, in UK, it's astounding. Germany, the violent acts of anti-Semitism. And if you look at the manifestations of anti-Semitism, it's in its very cultural and social forms over the last 20 years, it's really no surprise something like this happened October 7th, unfortunately. So I completely agree with you.
Why do you think this happens, and then people, wherever, feel forced to pick a side immediately without taking a look first what has happened there? You said it, we know that Hamas is using all these people as innocents, as human shields. It's been covered a long time. There was a documentary called Alice in Gaza, which really shows it very well. But
I saw.
you saw, yeah, it's you know, it's there, it's out there. But you know, the people, also in Germany, wherever in the US, they pick a side, and it's usually not the Israeli side. Israel is the only country that has to apologize that it defends itself. What happened if that happened in Russia? What happened if they would, you know, we don't have to ask them what's going to happen if something attacked like that or other countries. It's
Well, you got to look at the failure to address racism and anti-Semitism. It's a running sore in the psychoanalytic movement, and it really hasn't begun to be remedied, and it just keeps proliferating more and more. And it's still the case that psychoanalysts struggle to incorporate anti-racist perspectives, and this might be a reason why it has such an engaged, relatively resonance with the Jewish people, because the Jew anti-Semitism, it's the oldest form of hatred.
It's something I can't, you know, I can't just get in my head, you know. I was, for the first time in the war, for the very first time, I stayed for till the 19th, so that was 2 weeks, and many rocket alarms. I wasn't so scared of the rocket alarms at all. I was much more worried about the commandos that on the second day or so, on the Sunday, Monday, the plan was to go back to Tel Aviv. And I called the German consulate because the embassy was not reachable in Haifa. And I asked her, we want to go to Tel Aviv, but, you know, there are roadblocks and everything. And she said, don't even think about taking a car. Don't even think about taking a taxi. They might be everywhere. They might be on the highways shooting at people. And she said the only way to go there is by bus. So we took a bus early in the morning on Tuesday, 7 o'clock, and I saw there was one police car outside of the city. If there was a commando, they would have taken it immediately out. Got to Ashdod, got on the train, got back to Tel Aviv, and then in the afternoon, the next sirens, because Hamas announced, no, we're really shooting at Tel Aviv the whole time. So it's
it just shows you how division and prejudice have been on the rise for years to an alarming degree, and the world's turned a blind eye to this. You see this in the States; it's completely divided. You saw it in Israel the last 8 months with Bibi's new coalition coming in and hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets. And that's what I think essentially happened. They were all focused on that, and they let down their guard. And that's why there was a breach of security. Again, I think more will come out in the future, but still, we have to realize one thing. If you look at the Mideast, Israel's certainly the most democratic country in the Mideast. Women's rights, gay rights. Try being gay or a woman in Iran or Iraq. Good luck. You won't last long. In fact, last year I helped sponsor an Iranian doctor, a woman, to get out of Tehran because the conditions were so abusive. She can't even go to a soccer match there. Women are just second-class citizens there. Same with the gay population. They have zero rights. Israel also lets everybody vote, and it allows the Arabs to be members of the Knesset, their government, their parliament. So you could criticize Israel all you want, its policy for sure. It's far from perfect. But you still have to respect the fact it is the most democratic country in the Mideast.
You think there will ever be a day when Israel will be measured or judged by the same criteria that every other country is judged?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. Yeah, if we judge them by all the other countries in the Mideast, Israel would be like, wow, but unfortunately it's not, because again, it's the division and prejudice against the Jews that form these types of tropes, stereotypes. And again, everybody watching this, keep in mind, I love the Muslim countries. I have lots of friends in there, from Tunisia to Morocco to all over the place. But why can't the Jews have one? It all makes no sense to me. What's the big deal?
When we had before the radio station closed in 2019, we did a couple of concerts with Israeli bands at the station, and we had refugees, a number of refugees, mostly from Syria and Afghanistan. And guess what? They were happy to finally be able to meet Israelis. You know, there's a beautiful picture of our friend Hagar Levy after a gig. She's hugging with a girl from Iraq with a hijab, and they had a good time. Because they were talking.
Well, what you're saying is, I spent so much time doing my movie there, and then the book. Everybody I met, Palestinians, Israelis, they all wanted renewed alliances. They didn't want any war. I was almost embarrassed. I said, does anybody want a war here? That's what I'm here to cover. I couldn't find one person. All they wanted to do was work together and share bread. But the narrative in the mainstream media is completely different than that, unfortunately. And they too are complicit and guilty, because they're perpetrating so much hostility. And then, people like Hamas get inspired. And I do accuse Roger Waters of inspiring Hamas. His rhetoric and false accusations against the Jewish people certainly inspired Hamas to attack Israel. I'll go on the record saying that. And, it's a profound reckoning for Roger Waters, because he tours all over the world, sells out stadiums. Many of those stadiums and arenas are owned by Jews. And I'm calling those people out too for being complicit and inspiring Hamas to execute the October 7th attacks. I have to trace the roots and the history leading up to their attacks on that horrible, horrible day.
I have to admit that when it comes to music, because I've been DJing for 30 years, and I was always playing a lot of British music, like Britpop, indie, and most of the bands, if you look at the pages of the BDS movement or the Artists UK for Palestine, you see names there, and I doubt that any of them has ever been to Israel. Or really, it's like a thing. It's like you have the feeling it's like, okay, if I want to be part of the hip musicians, I have to be anti-Israel. Like it's not even a question, Oh, of course we are BDS. Of course
it's blind belief. It's blind belief. This is the problem of the world right now. On every level, where people can't think for themselves and decide what their truth is within this life, and
what's there in the entertainment industry? You were writing also about Kanye West, about Roger Waters, people like that. What is driving them?
I uncovered primary evidence ranging from the theological and legal to the philosophical and artistic roots of anti-Semitism. And I traced the roots of anti-Semitism and the modern rejection of Jews in all these industries. And I really come out and say it's when people like Kanye West, Mel Gibson, and Roger Waters make these nefarious statements and egregious statements, they inspire armies, legions of people to buy into it because they're so famous and powerful. And people like that, who, in my opinion, should be held accountable also for the October 7th attacks because they helped incite it. And all their rhetoric over the years, believe me, Hamas was listening and taking notes. I know that for a fact.
Roger Waters was interviewed on a Hamas TV station telling them that the Israelis learn, not the Americans learned from the Israelis how to kill colored people in the US. That's what he said on Hamas TV. I saw it.
Yeah, that's
it's
Roger Waters should have
horrifying.
disappeared long ago. And he's the poster boy for abhorrence and oppression in all its forms. And I can't believe he's still going and selling out stadiums. It's, it's just alarming.
Was there a contact? Did you ever, after the film and after the book, did you actually ever meet Roger Waters in person, talk to him?
No, but he's called my name out on stage in interviews. He called me in one interview, a so-called filmmaker. Well, I've directed over 30 movies. And my answer to him is, as good as he thinks he is as a musician, Mozart or Chopin, he ain't. So
it's a good one. This is also one sign of.
And he still lip syncs now. Apparently, he lip syncs at a lot of his shows. So, I
one big sham.
Yeah, I could reveal the surprising truths about Roger Waters, but right now my heart and soul is with those hostages and the families and their friends. And I think we have to get those who are still alive out of there. They say there's 240 odd hostages now. Well, I guarantee you, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't still around. But those who are still alive, we have to focus on that. I've said from day one. And as far as the whole thing with Gaza and Israel goes, look, I do believe we have to get rid of Hamas. And then we have to start sitting down and breaking bread with the Palestinians and having construct conversations on how to try to cultivate peace in this region and respect.
I think in every country, in every peoples, if there isn't a unity within and a respect within, this really does cause the bigger problems to, come to happen. And I think that was exactly the breach they were looking for, unfortunately, that led to this horrific massacre and everything that's happening now.
Yeah, if you look at the historical insights of this and the sordid relations between both countries, between both people, there's no doubt that there was certainly bad communication on both sides. And this could have been resolved years ago by just sitting down and putting all the cards on the table and reaching some sort of an agreement in interest of all the people. Who nobody wants a war. I've never met one Israeli or Palestinian who wants a war. It's ridiculous. It's just Hamas and the politicians. They put themselves before the people, and that's the worst form of a human being, and especially a politician who's supposed to be raised to a higher barrier in life and a higher moral standard, and they're not.
Are you you're probably not gonna visit Israel in the near future, are you?
I might be going soon. I've put my name on a volunteer list, whatever they need. Even if they need me to fight, I'll go. If to take out Hamas, I'll do whatever they want. We got to fight for the next generation now.
Exactly.
Or volunteer in any way. I don't know if they want a 59-year-old guy with bad knees, but if they need me, I'll be there. I'm serious. And I'll say this to everyone, every supporter of Israel or the Jewish people, it's time to either donate to help first responders and people on the front lines, or it's time to do something to support Israel in some sort of way, because it's been through a very hard time. People are just, it's going to be almost impossible to recover for victims, the families, the friends. So show support, people, if you really, and this is the Jews, non-Jews, if you really care about anti-Semitism, the Jewish people in Israel, do something. Even send a poem if you have no money, something to warm the hearts of the people who have suffered irreparably since October 7th.
When we were there, lots of artists from the music scene. Of course, everything was closed. The concerts, like even Noga Eres, everybody who had shows lined up were all cancelled. Ellie from Lola Marsh, for example, she dedicated a song to Noah Garbani and a boyfriend who she heard were big Lola Marsh fans. She and others went to volunteer, distribute stuff to soldiers. And many others do now because they want to do something. They want to do music. They just to comfort the people. So some go to the places where the people who had to leave the Gaza envelope and live somewhere else right now are entertained, at least. The very heart and core and soul of this show, since Fafa and me do it together, is always to show, it was never meant to be political, but when it comes to Israel, it's always political. So our way of addressing this is to show the beautiful, many culture sides of Israel in form of music. You can also pick food, because it's also, when you go to Jaffa, you have music from Greece. You have, like Arisan, when he came to Jaffa in the 60s, he was influencing a lot of music. There's a lot of Greek music, there's Arabic music. There was the Voice of Peace, which broadcasted many music from around the world. Tel Aviv especially is a musical melting pot, a cultural melting pot of all cultures. It's always funny when people say Jews are white, Fafa is half Egyptian. Do you see it? No. My girlfriend is also one half Ashkenazi, one half Egyptian. People say Jews are white, but no, it's like, I would say, so many cultures after the diaspora coming back, and you have in each person, how can that be like a white supremacist?
It's true.
It's bullshit. But this is the page. It's like a hipster thing to be, the post-colonial, the queer studies and everything, which is very, very irritating, because especially, as you said before, queers for Palestine. Go into Gaza. What's going to happen to you?
That's why it's a contentious and often confusing subject. And the only solution, in my humble opinion, is for people to break bread together, realize that we're all one, and to really find some sort of middle ground here, because there's many decent people on both sides who want no part of this. They don't want the violence, and we have to realize and formulate something how we can change this for the better, and push forward. That's all we can do in the memory of those who have perished. It's horrific. But forgiveness still, Gandhi said it best. Forgiveness isn't for the weak, it's for the strong. And both people have a lot to offer this world, which still is a beautiful world. And we just have to bring those people to the table and maybe let the politicians take a bit of a backseat, because I really feel that the politicians, unfortunately, haven't had the best interests of their people in come first.
As a kid, I once said to my dad, that was still in the Cold War, I said, you know, why do they do wars? Why can't they just let the politicians go to the boxing ring and fight it out there and leave the people alone? That's, yeah, I said as a kid, it was not.
And look at the beauty of this conversation. And, you know, you're German, we're Jewish, we get along great. Who would have thought that almost 80 years later, since the last gunfire of World War II was heard? And, you know, I know myself, I've made many movies. My camera crew is actually German. And we've never had one problem. We get along great. So maybe 80 years from now, the Palestinians and Israelis could follow suit and work together. It's better to work together, trust me, than to be enemies. There's no gain in being enemies with anybody. And I realized with the Germans, I had much more in common than difference. And we get along great. I actually lived there for a while in a little town called Wuppertal Elberfeld, and I loved it. I really did. So we have to. I think the Palestinians and Israelis should study how the Jews and the Germans repaired their relationship, and if they can do it, anybody can do it, because that was, you know, the Holocaust was horrific. And again, to people like Roger Waters, in my book, I say, look, man, stop saying that Israel's worse than Nazi Germany. It's a completely false statement. And you're re-murdering the Jews, Roger Waters. Those who re-murdering 6 million people who were murdered and who aren't here to defend themselves. Roger Waters should be ashamed of himself. And I know that if we all sit down at the same table and break bread, we will see much more peace than war. I guarantee you that. Because I've interviewed hundreds on both sides. And again, not to be repetitive, I could barely find one who wanted a war. They all wanted to work harmoniously and live together harmoniously. And I think we've been grossly misinformed in the mainstream media, who is also, I hold accountable and guilty for helping fuel the fire to this very concerning conflict.
Wow, many great last words. Wow. Did you ever talk to Joseph Haddad?
Not that I recall.
He's an Israeli Arab, former IDF commander who was injured in Golan, and he's now like an outspoken activist. A bit like Rudi Roschmann, but Rudi Roschmann is Jewish and Joseph Haddad is Christian. And he's been doing a lot of work right now on social media.
Amazing work.
Yeah, because he, you know, he's not Muslim, but he's Arabic, and he's, you know, all these false accusations, what you hear about Jews and Israel especially is a thing. Yeah, it's not an apartheid state. It's, you know, there's so much stupidity out there. People think. Like what Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's dad posted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you saw it both. Yeah.
Look, what he says too is Jews are woven into the fabric of the world. It's alarming that in Europe there's less than 2 million Jews left. After World War II, well, before World War II, I think there was 9.8 million Jews. After the war, there was like 3 odd million Jews left. Today, there's less than 2 million Jews left because they feared for their safety because of all the random acts of anti-Semitism. So, if you look at Shakespeare to South Park, Israel to COVID-19, there's all these ancient stereotypes to internet memes. But the fact is, we have to look at the roots. I say education and action go hand in hand. Education without action will lead to sterility. Action without education leads to chaos. And if we could sit down and incorporate education and action and really get concrete discussion and suggestions from both sides, I'm 100% sure we could reach an agreement whereas both people are living harmoniously and rooting for each other and helping each other out. I want to reinforce how after spending so much time there and working on the movie Wish You Weren't Here, and now the new book that came out just a few days before October 7th called Bigot, I want to reinforce that most people I met, and I interviewed hundreds on both sides, really wanted to show respect to each other and wanted to break bread and work together. And that's a fact. So I presume, and I know that it's the politicians and Hamas that put their huge egos in front of their own people. And that's the worst thing to do when you're a politician.
That's unfortunately nothing new. We know that, unfortunately. It's what's your plan now, Ian? What are you going to do after?
I think I'll just chill, man, because who the hell wants to go to a music festival now after that?
No.
I'm just going to really meditate and show energy to the victims on both sides and really try to honor their legacy. That's all we can do right now. Again, these people were unwillingly put in the middle of this. They're innocent people. I mean, Hamas is using their own people as shields, human shields. And then they came in and these barbarians start killing Israelis and grandmothers and babies and raping women. Come on. So right now, I'm just sending all my energy and trying to connect with those victims and their families. And there's nothing else I can do, and raise some money and send it to the first responders in Israel. I'm challenging every Jew or supporter of Israel in the world to donate 1 day's salary to first responders in Israel. I think come on, folks, step up. And again, just because you're Jewish, it doesn't mean you're immune from being an anti-Semite too. Let me make that clear.
That's very, very, very true. Yeah.
I mean, so what, you're a Jew? What does that mean? I've seen many Jews who are anti-Semites, especially from my hometown, Montreal. And these people, Shakespeare wrote in 1932 a novel. He calls it the Hora de Verdad in Spanish, the hour of truth. And a lot of these people run away from the hour of truth. They masquerade themselves as being pious Jews. But when the Hora de Verdad arrives, they completely disappear.
Oh, boy, a lot to take in. There was a musician I followed for a long time. I met her a couple of times. She's from Tel Aviv. Her father is Muslim from Azerbaijan, but she'd never lived with him, and her mother is a Jew, and she suddenly switched to that narrative. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to defriend her. I couldn't read it anymore on my timeline. I was like, no, why? So there also an old friend who's, like a musician friend from Tel Aviv, a friend of us. he was dating an Arab Christian woman for many years, for 10 years. They really loved each other. And then they broke up, and you could see really on Instagram and Facebook how she got radicalized. She is a very educated woman. She comes from a wealthy background, and suddenly she defines herself as, she connects to the people. She doesn't condemn. She condemns Israel all the time. Like if she met somebody, like she got in some circle of the BDS movement or something like that, it's completely changed her narrative, and that's like, okay.
If all these people were so concerned about human rights, they should be protesting against Iraq, Iran, Syria, China, Russia. Why Israel?
Yeah.
Why Israel? Even with Bibi there, a lot of people don't like Bibi. That's fine. Even with Bibi there, it's still the most democratic country in the Mideast. You still have, he's still accountable to Knesset, and people are still allowed to protest against him, and it's been going on for months. But why not go after Syria, China, Iran, Iraq, and just picture yourself, folks. You're living in a house.
It's very ridiculous.
And all your neighbors around your house, Syria, Iraq, Iran, they all want to blow your head off. What are you going to do? You have a house and all your neighbors want to blow your head off because you're Jewish. What are you going to do? You have to defend yourself.
Right.
Yeah. And musicians decided to cancel their shows in Tel Aviv, but instead play in Russian.
Yeah,
play in
I don't know.
Play in Syria.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Again, I stress, just because you're a Jew, it doesn't exempt you from being an anti-Semite. There's no exemption. Again, and I'm not accusing these people of being anti-Semites, but I did a luncheon, a fundraiser to fight anti-Semitism several years ago, and 37 people showed up. Everybody donated except 6 Jews from my hometown, who are actually nice people. I was shocked. Non-Jews donated. And then the organizers phoned me and say, hey, and what the hell, man? These Montrealers, they didn't give a penny. They came. You go to a fundraiser, even if you like it, you don't like it, you leave something. Like, you don't go there, eat, drink, and you walk away. I could never do that, And I got a call. Even the non-Jews donated. So, and then some of these Jews came to my tennis events too, which when I was the chairman of the board for the Israeli Tennis Association, and that was all 501c3, all nonprofit, to bring kids from all over the world who were impoverished to play tennis in Israel and to learn about the history of Israel. And, it was a beautiful thing. And those same people used to come to the tennis and not even donate there. I guess shame on me for inviting them all the time. But you think eventually they'd come around and support you. Never did. It was always the same thing. The only people in the room who didn't donate were those same people. And, I have only respect for those people as human beings. I don't think they're evil, but I think they're just uneducated when it comes to helping others. And, every time the organizer phoned me, your same friend from Montreal came and didn't donate a penny. Everybody else did. You got to wonder what the hell's going on.
It's the question of what human being you choose to be. That's it. Before man, woman, identity, gender. It's like, what human being do you want to be, and what does the ideal human being represent?
I love that.
It's about accepting each other as fellow human beings first, before anything else. And I think in order to be in that preset, You need to do a lot of work on yourself, your surrounding, and being able to express your real truth without fear. This is the bottom line, for me at least.
No, I love what you're saying, and I'll even add to that. I agree 1,000% with you. But I have to point out, in this world, there's good Jews and there's bad Jews. I met very few bad Jews, but I can't respect the Jews that are imposters, that pretend to be good Jews, but in the moment of truth, completely disappear when their people, their country needs them. To me, that's extremely concerning. But I love what you said. And
thank you.
I couldn't say it better myself. I really believe it's up to you to choose your own destiny and who you actually are going to be. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Very powerful.
Thank you.
One last thing I'd like to add too is that there's three types of people in this world. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who don't know what happened. And the people who don't know what happened, I think they're the most dangerous because they refuse to get educated and to get current about what's really taking place. In today's world, education is the key. And again, forgiveness. You have to, as Gandhi said, I'll repeat it, forgiveness isn't for the weak, it's for the strong. And if you can't use those elements on your personal journey, and if you're always just going to harbor resentment, it's going to breed bad energy, and that bad energy will spread. And that's essentially what happened with Hamas. They portrayed every Jew as being evil, and they just want to annihilate every Jew. It's in their template. And for me, any group who espouses that is not human. It's barbaric, and it's also, it creates a vendetta. And no matter what, because let me tell you, Israel certainly has its problems, but I've met many extraordinary people there who are doing amazing things to make this world better. Ecologically, technology, art, and humanitarian. And Hamas refused to see any of that. It's ridiculous what they're saying, and it's false. Because there are magnificent people in the state of Israel who are contributing not only to Israel, but all over the world to humankind and bettering this world.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for being with us.
You. And this is a great show, and I fully endorse the show. And congratulations. And we all have to meet on happier times.
Yes.
But there's going to be a big healing process now, because I cannot go out on Dizengoff and raise a glass of wine or whatever my beverage is. I can't toast the life. I can't toast L'Chaim right now, because I feel it would be inappropriate. We have to go through a big healing and let the families, the victims, heal. We have to show all our support and energy toward them. And for myself, it's going to be a long time until I go out on Dizengoff, one of my favorite streets, or Ben Yehud, or any of those streets there. That I love that. I love Tel Aviv. But it's going to take a long time, because we need a healing process. We need to all meditate, and we need to find a solution That's not only good for us. I never go into business deals where I say, hey, this is a great deal for you. No, it's got to be, we got to get serious. I do believe, and I'm not political, but I don't believe Bibi Netanyahu will be the right guy to lead this, something like this. We need change. We need younger blood.
Yeah.
They say Bibi's Michigana. Trying being married to what he's married to, you'd also be Michigana. But anyhow, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, let's leave that out of the story right now. Yeah, because there's much to say there, but
yeah, I think he's gone over the edge, though.
Yeah,
we need healing, though, more than look. Everybody's so concerned about the security breach. What happened? Sure, they'll find out. But what we need most, first and foremost, is a healing process.
Yeah.
And again, all our energy has to be directed positively toward the hostages, the victims, the families. They need our help right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's enough said, I guess. That's no more words today, but thank you both. And it's been an honor. And I hope we do it again sooner than later. And I wish you guys all the best. This is a very important show.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Ian. Pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.